The thumbprint was still wet. Police found it on the bathroom door where 9-year-old Vernita Wheat's body lay wrapped in a blanket. Her hands, feet, and neck are bound with a television cable. Strangled. Left to rot in an abandoned building for 3 weeks. But here's what made detectives' blood run cold. The man who left that thumbprint had killed 3 more people while they were searching for Vernita. And he wasn't done yet. May 1984. A friendly neighbor asked if a little girl could help him carry a stereo. Just 1 hour, he promised. She walked out holding his hand. When her mother went to the address he gave, she found an empty building. No apartment, no stereo, no neighbor. Everything was a lie. His real name was Alton Coleman, and he was supposed to be in court that morning for attacking a teenage girl. Instead, he kidnapped a 9-year-old and disappeared. What happened next was a nightmare. 53 days, 6 states, 8 people were murdered. The FBI didn't just add him to the 10 most wanted list. They created a special 11th spot, reserved only for criminals actively hunting new victims. But here's the most terrifying part. Every single survivor said the exact same thing. He seemed so nice. One mother's decision to trust a friendly neighbor. 1 hour, 1 promise, 8 people died. Because evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles and asks for help carrying a stereo. Days turned into weeks. The investigation consumed hundreds of officers across multiple states. They searched abandoned buildings, empty warehouses, and every dark corner of the industrial district. They used search dogs. They went door to door. But they found nothing. It was as if Coleman and Vernita had simply disappeared into thin air. Hope was fading. Everyone feared the worst. A 9-year-old child could not survive this long without help. The longer she was missing, the less likely she would be found alive. But Juanita refused to give up. She prayed. She waited. She believed in miracles. On June 19th, 3 weeks after Vernita vanished, a man searching for scrap metal to sell entered an abandoned building in Waukegan. He climbed to the 2nd floor. As he walked into an old bathroom, he froze. There on the floor, wrapped in a blanket and jacket, was the body of a young child. Her hands, feet, and neck were bound with television cable. The forensic team arrived. They carefully examined the scene. The body was badly decomposed, making identification difficult. But the clothing matched what Vernita was wearing when she disappeared. Carnival tickets were found in the jacket pocket. The same carnival she had visited with her mother that day. Hair clips still held her hair in place, just as her mother had described. Investigators removed the bathroom door to search for fingerprints. In the FBI lab, examiners found a clear thumbprint. They compared it to samples on file. The match was positive. The thumbprint belonged to Alton Coleman. They also confirmed the child's identity by comparing fingerprints from her school books. It was Vernita Wheat. The search was over, but not in the way anyone had hoped. Medical examiners determined that Vernita had been strangled with a ligature. She had been dead for about 3 weeks, which meant she was killed within hours of being taken. All this time, while police searched desperately, while her mother prayed for her safe return, Vernita had been in that abandoned building, just blocks from Coleman's grandmother's house. What investigators didn't know was that they had given Coleman many chances to stop him years before. Between 1973 and 1983, Coleman had been charged with sex crimes 6 times. But he was smooth as silk in court, according to law enforcement. Waukegan Police Lieutenant Mark Hansen later told reporters that Coleman was exceptionally good at convincing jurors. He dressed well. He spoke calmly. He told convincing stories. People were impressed by his testimony. He came off as a decent person, not a predator. Coleman also relied on something else to escape justice. He believed in voodoo and claimed that supernatural forces made him invulnerable to the law. Friends said he was deeply convinced that these spirits protected him from punishment. Whether he truly believed this or used it as psychological manipulation remains unclear. But what is clear is that his charm and courtroom performance allowed him to walk free time and time again. In 1983, his own sister reported that Coleman had tried to rape her 8-year-old daughter. 3 weeks later, she appeared in court asking the judge to drop the charges. She claimed it was a misunderstanding. The judge was astounded by her testimony and said he believed the woman was terrified of Coleman. But without a victim willing to testify, the charges were dismissed. Coleman walked free once again. One more chance for the system to stop him. Now the charges against Coleman changed. This was no longer just kidnapping. This was murder. The FBI issued a nationwide manhunt. Coleman was armed and extremely dangerous. He needed to be found before he could hurt anyone else. But Coleman was already gone, and he was not alone. While investigators were still processing the crime scene, news came in from Gary, Indiana. Another child had been attacked. 7-year-old Tamika Turks and her 9-year-old aunt Annie Hillard were walking when a man and woman on bicycles approached them. The couple seemed friendly. They said they had toys and clothes to give away. The girls followed them into the woods. What happened next was horrific. Both girls were attacked. Tamika was killed. Annie barely survived. When she was strong enough to talk, police showed her photos. She identified the attackers as Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown. This changed everything. Coleman was not working alone anymore. He had a partner, and they were on a killing spree. That same day Tamika's body was found, Coleman befriended another victim. 25-year-old Donna Williams from Gary, Indiana, met Coleman and Brown at her church. They called themselves Phil and Pam and said they were visiting from Boston. Donna, a kind and trusting person, offered to help them. That evening, she was reported missing. Her mother said Donna had left to pick up her new friends. 3 weeks later, on July 11th, an anonymous tip led Detroit police to an abandoned building near Wayne State University. Inside, they found Donna's badly decomposed body. She had been strangled with a stocking. Her car had been discovered 2 weeks earlier, just 2 blocks away, with Coleman's fingerprints inside and a fake identification card belonging to Brown. The evidence was mounting, but Coleman and Brown kept moving, always staying one step ahead of the authorities. The FBI put the pieces together. Coleman and Brown were moving from state to state, leaving death in their wake. They would blend into communities, gain people's trust, and then attack. They traveled on stolen bicycles or in stolen cars. They targeted anyone who seemed vulnerable, whether adults or children. On June 24th in Detroit, Coleman and Brown approached a 28-year-old woman outside her home at knife point. They demanded she drive them to Ohio, but this woman refused to become another victim. In a moment of incredible bravery, she deliberately crashed her car into a parked truck and ran for her life. She escaped. Her damaged car was later found abandoned, but she survived to tell her story. Not everyone would be so lucky. In Dearborn Heights, Michigan, they beat an elderly couple named Palmer Jones and Marge Jones in their home and stole their car. The victims survived, but they were traumatized. Days later in Toledo, Ohio, police found the bodies of Virginia Temple and her 9-year-old daughter, Rochelle. They had been strangled and hidden in a crawl space in their own home. Coleman and Brown had befriended Virginia, stayed for dinner, played with her children, and then murdered her and her daughter after everyone went to sleep. Before leaving Toledo, Coleman and Brown invaded another home. An elderly couple, 77-year-old Frank Duvendak and his 73-year-old wife Dorothy, were bound and gagged with paper tissues. Their money was stolen, their car was taken, but they were left alive. The pattern was unpredictable. Sometimes Coleman and Brown killed. Sometimes they didn't. The randomness made them even more terrifying because no one could predict who would survive and who wouldn't. In Cincinnati, a 15-year-old girl named Tani Story was reported missing. She had gone to summer school that day. 8 days later, her body was found in an abandoned building. She had been strangled. Above her body, someone had scratched hateful words into the wall. On July 13th, Coleman and Brown knocked on the door of Harry and Marlene Walters in Norwood, Ohio. The couple was selling a camper in their driveway. Coleman and Brown spent hours chatting with them on the porch, drinking coffee, acting friendly. The Walters invited them inside. That was their fatal mistake. Coleman beat Marlene to death with a candlestick, hitting her over 20 times. He attacked Harry too, crushing his skull. Somehow, Harry survived. When their daughter came home, she found her parents covered in blood. Coleman and Brown had stolen their car and were already miles away. The violence was escalating. The FBI realized Coleman was not killing out of necessity anymore. He was killing because he enjoyed it. Each murder was more brutal than the last. He showed no mercy, no remorse, no hesitation. But Coleman made mistakes. He left fingerprints everywhere. He was caught on camera. Survivors identified him. Evidence piled up. The FBI added him to their 10 most wanted list, and not just as number 10. They created a special 11th spot just for him. This was reserved for the most dangerous criminals actively hunting victims. Coleman fit that description perfectly. Media coverage exploded. His face was everywhere. Every news channel, every newspaper, every police station had his photo. The FBI launched one of the biggest manhunts in American history. Thousands of tips poured in from across the country. Every police department was on alert. Every community was warned. Everyone was looking for Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown. The couple continued moving. In Kentucky, they kidnapped a college professor named Oline Carmichael Jr. They locked him in the trunk of his car and drove across state lines. Somehow, he survived. In Dayton, Ohio, they stayed with Reverend Millard Gay and his wife, Catherine, pretending to be religious. They even attended church services with them. Then they robbed them at gunpoint and stole their car. On July 18th, they killed their last known victim. Eugene Scott, a 77-year-old man in Indiana, was shot and stabbed repeatedly. They took his car and kept moving. But by now they were exhausted. They had been running for almost 2 months. They had crossed 6 states. They had left 8 people dead and countless others traumatized. The pressure was too much. They needed to go home. Coleman and Brown headed back to Illinois, back to familiar territory, back to Waukegan, where it all started. They thought they could blend in there. They thought they would be safe. But the FBI was waiting. Every officer in the region was watching. The net was closing in. On July 20th, 1984, a man was sitting at a red light in Evanston, Illinois. Coleman and Brown crossed the street in front of his car. The man recognized Coleman immediately. He had gone to school with him. He knew that face. While his friend called the police, he followed them slowly in his car, keeping them in sight. Within minutes, police arrived. Officers surrounded Coleman and Brown in Mason Park. There was no dramatic chase, no shootout, no resistance. When confronted, they gave fake names. But when officers searched them, they found evidence. A loaded gun in Brown's purse, a bloody knife hidden in Coleman's boot. Their fingerprints confirmed their identities. The 53-day reign of terror was over. Alton, Coleman, and Deborah Brown were arrested without any struggle. The most wanted fugitives in America simply gave up. After all the violence, all the murders, all the chaos, they surrendered quietly in a park. Both faced trial in multiple states. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Fingerprints at every crime scene, survivor testimonies, stolen property found in their possession. There was no denying what they had done. Coleman received 4 death sentences from 3 different states: Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. He was the only person in American history at that time to face execution in 3 separate states. He spent years appealing his convictions, but every court rejected his claims. Deborah Brown also received death sentences, but her fate was different. Experts testified that she had an intellectual disability. Her IQ tested between 59 and 74. She had suffered brain damage as a child. Psychiatrists said she had a dependent personality disorder and was completely dominated by Coleman. Before meeting him, she had no criminal history at all, no violence, no trouble with the law. She was engaged to another man and living a normal life until Coleman came into her world. In 1991, Ohio Governor Richard Celeste commuted her death sentence to life in prison without parole. Indiana followed in 2018, changing her death sentence to 140 years in prison. She is currently serving her sentence at Dayton Correctional Institution in Ohio. In 2005, she recorded a video apology to the families of the victims, expressing remorse for her actions. Alton Coleman showed no such remorse. Even at his trials, he blamed Brown for the murders. He claimed she was the killer, not him. But nobody believed his lies. The evidence spoke for itself. On April 26, 2002, Alton Coleman was executed by lethal injection at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility. He was 46 years old. He had spent over 6,000 days on death row. His final meal was enormous: steak, fried chicken, French fries, sweet potato pie, ice cream, and more. His last words were verses from Psalm 23, repeated over and over. Harry Walters, who survived Coleman's attack and lost his wife, Marlene, witnessed the execution. So did other family members of the victims. For them, justice had finally been served. But justice could not bring back the lives that were stolen. It could not erase the pain and trauma. It could not give Juanita Wheat her daughter back. The case of Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown exposed serious failures in the justice system. Coleman had been charged with sexual crimes 6 times before he started killing. Most cases were dismissed or resulted in light sentences. If he'd been properly prosecuted earlier, Vernita Wheat and 7 other innocent people might still be alive today. This story reminds us of an important truth. Evil does not always look scary. Sometimes it comes with a friendly smile and a kind voice. It knocks on your door pretending to need help. It offers gifts and acts trustworthy. It blends into neighborhoods and gains your confidence. That is what makes it so dangerous. If this story has touched your heart, please share it. Spread awareness about the dangers that exist in our society. Help others learn from this tragedy. Let Vernita's story and the stories of all the victims serve as a reminder to stay vigilant. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that shed light on the darkness in our world. By understanding these cases, we can better protect ourselves and our loved ones.